What's up, everyone? Welcome to the October 27th edition of the NBA Injury Report, brought to you by BetMGM. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. We have a four-game NBA slate tonight, so not a ton of injury news to talk about, but there are a few spots to pay attention to, and we will go over those. But first, the no-brainer bet from BetMGM is back. Click the link in the description below. Bet $10 on any pregame NBA money line and receive $200 in free bets if any player in that game hits a three-pointer. If you live in Pennsylvania, New York, Mississippi, or Ontario, this offer is not valid. But outside of that, if you have access to BetMGM, take advantage. BetMGM is giving you $200 basically free. It's as close to free money as you're going to get because there is going to be a three-pointer in every game. Giving you $200 in free bets for just betting $10 on a pregame money line after clicking the link below. So be sure to do that. And now looking at the few pieces of injury news we do have today, Tim Hardaway Jr. is questionable for the Mavs. He missed their last game. And in that game, we saw about 37 minutes from Spencer Dinwiddie. We saw about 35 minutes from Reggie Bullock. If Hardaway misses again tonight, I expect that you see increased playing time for those two. If he's back, it's likely that you get Dinwiddie back around 30 minutes. You get Bullock probably back around 30 minutes, maybe 31 or 32. And then off the bench, we also saw about 13 minutes for Green and Campazzo. Neither of those are particularly interesting from a DFS standpoint, but Hardaway's presence or absence does make a big difference, in particular for Spencer Dinwiddie, and also on a slate that is starving for value to a lesser extent for Reggie Bullock. Even though he's not a great point per minute guy, if he gets more minutes, he does obviously have a better chance of being a quality DFS option. Now, for the Los Angeles Clippers, Marcus Morris is still out. Kawhi Leonard is still out. Paul George is questionable. He missed their game on Tuesday. In that game, we saw Nicholas Batum and Terrence Mann replace him and Morris in the starting lineup. So if George is back, I expect one of Batum or Mann to go back to the bench. My guess is that it would be Batum, but it's the Clippers. They can kind of do whatever they want. So one of those two would go back to the bench. If George is back, you also would just get more volatile minutes for all of the players in the rotation that are not main pieces, whether that's Terrence Mann, Nick Batum, Amir Coffey played a bunch of minutes off the bench last game. Ivica Zubac played 34, 35 minutes and led the team. George doesn't have a direct impact on Zubac, but if he's back, you potentially see a little bit less playing time for Zubac and Covington getting more minutes as the backup center as opposed to a wing. So George's presence would have a little bit of a downgrade on the playing time of most players. And then also he would cut into production because in the games that he has played without Kawhi going back to the start of last season, which is almost all of them, he has a 34% usage rate and a 29% assist percentage. So if George plays, he himself looks very good, but also you would need to dial back the expectations for pretty much everybody else on the Clippers compared to if he sits. If he sits, Reggie Jackson had a very high usage rate last game. He was absolutely awful, but he tried. Norman Powell had a really disappointing game, but there would be a lot of opportunities for him again if Paul George is out. John Wall only played about 19 minutes, but he could certainly play more. He had about a 30% usage rate in that game, and he would need to do more offensively if George is out. So a really big impact across the board here, whether or not Paul George plays. And the Memphis Grizzlies, John Konchar is questionable. He moved back to the bench last game with the return of Dillon Brooks, but there are a lot of minutes available if he sits. He is still a key rotation player for Memphis. My best guess is that you would get one or both of Roddy or LaRavia replacing him in the rotation. Going back to the start of the preseason, Roddy's averaged 0.6 DraftKings points per minute. LaRavia's averaged 0.78. They would both be risky options, but there's not a lot of good value on this slate. So they would be guys that we could potentially gamble on if we're trying to pay up for somebody like Luka in our lineups. Another potential option, though, is Tyus Jones, who is $4,600. He's primarily backing up Ja Morant, but he has been playing minutes alongside him as well. So the fact that we know Memphis is willing to play them alongside each other, you could potentially just see a little bit more run for Tyus Jones if Konchar is out. Also, not a bad spot to gamble in tournaments. So to recap, the three biggest pieces of news we're waiting on, Tim Hardaway Jr., questionable. Biggest beneficiaries are likely Spencer Dinwiddie and Reggie Bullock if he is out. Paul George, questionable. Whole team benefits if he is out. Nick Batum and Terrence Mann both started last game. If George is back, I expect Batum to go back to the bench, but the whole team benefits if George is out. The whole team takes a step back if George is in. And John Konchar, questionable for the Grizzlies. LaRavia and Roddy likely get more playing time if he is out. It could also potentially be a benefit for Tyus Jones.